So here's all of my glazes. And you can see they're all going to need some more water. I learned to measure the ingredients into water to make them easier to mix. So that's how I do it. And then over here, I have my scale. And I did have my, So there's two different ways that I measure specific gravity. So one is my 100 milliliter flask, and the other one is my 100 milliliter syringe. So either one is accurate enough for my purposes. It just depends on how I'm feeling about doing all that extra cleaning. The syringe by far is easier to clean than the flask. So I'll bring both of these guys over here. Okay, I'm going to put you up on the whatever that camera thing is called, the tripod, so that you can see the whole table. Here we go. Be able to see all this stuff? Yes, good. Okay. So I'm going to get a bucket of water right now. So I will have to add more water. Hi, my sink's over here. If I was a professional videographer, I would have had this prepared ahead of time. Actually, I would have had someone else prepare it for me ahead of time. It'd be like the Galloping Gourmet. Only with far less booze. Okay, so here's my water. I store my glazes with these toilet brushes. They're new. I buy them new, put them in the buckets. And then they stay in the bucket, and each bucket has its own stir stick. That saves me time, and it also saves glaze from washing the stir stick over and over again. So this is my floating blue. Yes, I know, I could have a drill attachment, and this would go a lot faster. Do you know what happened when I tried that? I sprayed glaze everywhere. So I just go slow here, and I'm not giving it that thorough of a mix. When it goes through the sieve, it actually mixes it really well. So I don't have to worry too much about making it perfect. And I sieve it back and forth 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to go through this bucket of glaze and show you my process, and then I'll turn off the camera so you don't have to watch me the rest of the time. So some of these recipes have bentonite in them, and bentonite doesn't like to mix really well. So that'll be kind of clumpy going through the sieve. This is a 40 mesh sieve, so this is what I start with. This is going to break up and combine the particles. And also the advantage of doing this with the last dregs of my previous bucket of clay is it also gets all of the little chunks of what may have come off my students' work. Sometimes in the bisque you've got a little bit of chunky stuff where they signed their work or did some carving. And it gets rid of any debris like that. There are faster ways of doing this, I'll admit. This is a 5,000 gram batch, so it'll fill most of this bucket when I'm done. Alright, let that sit for a moment. Sides of the bucket. All the lumps out of the bottom. I really love mixing my own glaze. First of all, there's the tremendous cost savings, but also knowing exactly what's in it. And if there's a problem on my work or on someone else's work, I can track down the culprit and maybe fix it. Where with commercial glazes, you have no idea what's in it. They won't tell you what's in it, and you just have to take it or leave it. There's no adjusting it or fixing it. And if you have a clay body that works with most of your glazes, and you have one glaze that acts up, it's much easier to play with the glaze recipe than it is to mess with the clay recipe. Or sorry, play with the glaze recipe rather than adjust your clay. So in this case, most of this is going to be bentonite, so what I'm going to do is switch that over, and I'll sieve it through again. I'll just give it a chance to dissolve. The bentonite helps keep your glaze in suspension, and that's why you use it. Making a mess already. Off from my brush. Recently on Clay Buddies there was a discussion about rutile blue or blue rutile coming out green, and I found that also with the first rutile blue recipe that I tried, and what I managed to find was this Chapel's Floating Blue, or Hare's Fur, whichever way you care to look at it, which is much more reliable. I never ever get green from this. I always get kind of a creamy blue with streaks where it's thick, and then it breaks rust on the thin areas and whatever texture. And it has red iron oxide in it and cobalt oxide for the blue. It guarantees the blue, so you're relying on, you're not relying on the rutile to cause the blue, which is what a blue rutile is. It's where you rely on a chemical reaction with the rutile to cause blue, but that also causes green. So putting cobalt oxide in it guarantees that you're going to get blue all the time. And that's another thing I like about making my own glaze, is understanding how things react and what colors you can make. Chrome is a fascinating chemical. Chrome is bright green, and it takes very little to color glazes. It's very strong colorant, but when mixed with tin, you get pink, red, maroon, and burgundy colors, depending on the proportion of chrome to tin. But you can also use chrome to make a really cool orange color. That's a tangerine glaze that you'll find on glazy.org. Have a look at it. It's really cool. It says tangerine, but to me it's more like a burnt pumpkin. Nice, just a real natural looking orange color. Okay, so that went through really well. I'm going to do one more 40 mesh into my spare bucket. It's my spare bucket, right? Yeah. And then when I sieve it into my permanent bucket, I'm going to do it through an 80 mesh sieve, just to make sure that all the particles are as mixed as they're going to get. Go through and get all the chunks out of this bucket. Clean out my brush a little bit. Is anybody actually here? Hi, anybody who's actually here with me live? It actually takes much longer to mix and adjust the glazes than it takes to actually measure out all the materials. One more time through the 40 mesh. I don't know if you can see black streaks in that, but there's mixing that cobalt oxide in is super important. And there was a little bit of that left on the side of the bucket. So what I'm going to do, as you can see on the side of my bucket up here, I don't know if you can tell, there's a streak of black where the cobalt oxide was sitting. I'm going to take some water and my sponge, get that off the side of the bucket. Make sure that it's all mixed into the glaze. I'm not not worried about any of these items, any of this material soaking into my skin, but I will make sure that I wash my hands really well after and don't eat it or pour it over my breakfast cereal. I'm sure there are some things we have to worry about soaking through our skin, but there's nothing in this glaze that I'm worried about. The cobalt is the toxic one, and it's too big of a particle to soak into your skin. Okay, so that's pretty clean. There aren't going to be any oxides left in there. Clean out my sponge. All right. And there is a lot of debris left in here. So that could be impurities in my materials. Sometimes you get little flecks of stuff in your buckets of materials, either in your own studio, or sometimes they come that way with contaminants. My red iron oxide was kept in a bag that degraded, so there's little bits of plastic that just kind of disintegrated in there. So this is, I don't know if you can see little chunks in there. So I'm happy with that sieving job, and I'm just going to take that over to my sink right now. Tap it off so it doesn't drip. Okay, I'll scrape that off. So all this has to be washed in between glazes so I don't contaminate anything. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and check my specific gravity now. So specific gravity is super easy to measure. So you have a container that measures 100 milliliters of water. So it could be a flask like this, or it can be a plastic cup, doesn't matter. You weigh out, so you turn your scale on, and you put your container, whatever you want to use, on the scale. And then you want to zero it out. And usually that's a button labeled tare, T-A-R-E. So you hit that and it turns it to 0 again. And then you fill your container up until you have 100 grams. And when that happens, you make a mark on your container. And that's 100 grams of water. 100 milliliters of water weighs 100 grams. And then you go ahead and you fill up your container with your glaze up to that mark. And it'll be heavier than 100 grams because there's glaze materials in it in addition to water. And that measurement, 150, 145, 130, 170, that's your specific gravity. And that's going to tell you how much glaze material you have in your water, the thickness of your glaze, and that's going to determine how well it pours, dips, brushes. And you get recommendations from other potters about where to kind of start, zero it in, but everyone with experience develops their own. So for example, I figured out that I really like this one to be broken. I really like this one to be 148. So if I was like 146 to 150, I would be happy with that. So I'll clean that up in a minute. I just shattered my thing. So I'll end up going ahead and using this one. Okay, so I want to zero out my syringe, hit tare, fill it up to the 100 mark. I always overfill it and then bring it right down to the line. Ooh, I'm a bit low, 143.7. So I'm not going to add any water to that. So I'm good to go on the specific gravity. Here's my 80 mesh sieve, and I'm going to sieve it into my original glaze bucket. And because this is a little thinner than I like it to be, I'm just going to leave the lid cracked on it for a few days, and it'll evaporate. So now, some people will put this on their pottery wheel and just hold the brush and let the pottery wheel spin it around. You can buy something called a talisman sieve that you twist, and it's got a brush and that pushes the glaze through the sieve. And there's actually mechanical ones that you can buy. So for me, I'm not there yet. I'm just doing it the good old-fashioned way. So this is going to be really boring for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video. So I just want to talk about, so I talked about the specific gravity. The other things that you need to adjust is the flocculation. So there's lots of great videos, much better than anything I can do online about flocculating your glazes. John Britt has a great video. There's a couple of other ones. So you want to make sure that your glaze is gelled enough so that it will stick to your pot. If your glaze is too gelled, which means that it's like pudding, after you check the specific gravity. So the specific gravity you do first, and then you deal with the gelling, the flocculation, deflocculation. So if it's too gelled, then you can add something called a deflocculant. Good deflocculants are sodium silicate, soda ash, and Darvan. You can buy a product called Darvan. I haven't bought it myself. I just use the soda ash, sodium silicate to be aware of. Oh, you're back. So once you've made your glaze, and you're going to test it and make sure that it actually goes on your work properly. And if there's any issues with it, then you start adjusting things. It's something that comes with experience. If you are interested in mixing glazes and you're local to me, you can come on down and mix a glaze with me, and I'll talk to you about what I know. I'm not an expert. I was a beginner at this very recently. But we can learn together, and I can show you all the resources that I go to when I have questions, and we can get excited about mixing together. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this. If you have any questions, pop them into the video and I'll answer them later. Thanks so much for joining me. Oh, there's people. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Barb. Who else is here? Lori, hi. Kimberly, hello. You were too far away for me to read who was there, so I'm really glad that you stopped in to say hi. So that's what I have to share. And let me know how you feel, and if there's any questions, or tell me if you liked it. Should I do more like this? It sure is nice to have somebody else in the studio with me. Maybe you're interested in what I'm doing. Maybe you're not. You just want to see my my wonderful face. All right, so I'm gonna go and finish this up because it's boring. There's like 4 more of these to do. So thanks, guys. Happy Saturday. Bye now.